Welcome to section 5.1, Intro to Factoring. Now, before we can talk about the process of factoring and work on an example, let me get down to some basics. Now, in the previous sections, we were talking about multiplying with polynomials, and in the process was foiling. So let me point out that FOIL basically means that you're multiplying. So again, the operation for FOIL is multiplying. Now, what we're going to be doing for factoring will be the opposite of FOIL. So let me write an arrow here. So factoring will be the opposite of foiling. So if the operation for foiling is multiplying, and we establishing that factoring is the opposite of FOIL, then I'm going to be doing the opposite of multiplying. In this case, we're going to be dividing, or just divide. Now, when we're going to be dividing or simply divide, basically we're going to undo FOIL. So another word that some might be used to or able to understand is basically undistribute. So factor or factoring means to divide or undistribute, to do the opposite of foiling or the opposite of multiplying. So we're going to be talking about how to factor by GCF and factor by grouping. And when we're talking about factoring by GCF and grouping, this is mainly what we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about dividing or undistributing, meaning the opposite of FOIL and multiply. So you're going to hear me saying divide or undistribute multiple times. In the first part, we're going to cover factor by GCF. GCF stands for greatest common factor, GCF. So greatest common factor means that you're going to be looking for a common factor that's within each term. So if it asks you, or if it says factor by GCF, that means that you're going to look at each of the term that is in common. So in the first term we have 40x squared, the second negative 25x, and the third negative 100. So if you were to analyze and see what is in common, all three of them are divisible by 5. So if we're factoring, that means I'm going to be dividing by 5. So what I'm going to do is, our common factor is 5. So I'm going to undistribute 5. So anything that I'm undistributing or dividing by the common factor, it will be outside the parenthesis. So again, if I'm dividing by a common factor, in this case the 5, it will go outside the parenthesis. Now remember, I am undistributing with the 5. So by undistributing, I am dividing. So 40x squared divided by 5 will be 8x squared. Negative 25x divided by 5 is just negative 5x. And then negative 100 divided by 5 will be negative 20. So I am just simply undistributing by using the greatest common factor 5. In this, your common factor will always go outside or in front of the parenthesis. So this is our final answer. There's nothing you can do to simplify, so that's what you would box as your final answer. In the second example, we have negative 16m squared plus 12m minus 32. Alright, it asks you to factor by GCF. So I'm going to look and check what is in common in each of the three terms. Now, this is where we have to be very careful. If your first term is negative, that means I'm going to divide all three terms by negative. Now, I'm checking what's in common with all three, and the only thing that's common between negative 16, the 12, and the 32. And again, the reason I'm looking at the numbers is because that's the only thing that's in common, which is just numbers. All three are divisible by 4. So I'm going to divide each term by negative 4. Since negative 4 is our GCF, the negative 4 will go outside the parenthesis, or in front of the parenthesis. Alright, so I'm going to divide. Negative 16m squared divided by negative 4 will be positive 4m squared. Positive 12m divided by negative 4 will be negative 3m. Negative 32 divided by negative 4 will be positive 8. So, again, I undistribute with my negative 4, and then when I'm factoring, I'm dividing. So, what I got was negative 4 times my polynomial, well, my trinomial, 4m squared minus 3m plus 8. So that would be our final answer. In this example, we have negative 10n to the 7th power plus 14n to the 6th power plus 8n to the 4th power. Now, we're going to look at each of the three terms that we have here. Now, I'm going to look at the number first. So negative 10, the 14, and 8. Since the first term has a negative, I'm going to divide each term by a negative. What's common between 10, 14, and 8 are all three are divisible by 2. Now, what else is in common between all three terms is they all have n's. Now, since they all have n, that means we have to divide by n. So let me write n's. The only thing you gotta watch out is that all three of them have exponents. So when we are factoring by GCF, when we're going to undistribute, we're going to always divide by the lowest exponent. So I'm going to put to the 4th here, to the 4th here, to the 4th here. So my GCF, my greatest common factor, is negative 2n to the 4th. So again, what's in common with all three numbers is negative 2. And the reason it's negative because because the first term has a negative, so I'm going to divide by a negative. In addition, all three terms has n, so I'm going to divide by the lowest exponent, so n to the 4th. My GCF, so I'm going to undistribute by negative 2n to the 4th power, so it will be outside or in front of the parenthesis. So, I'm dividing the first term by negative 2n to the 4th. So negative 10 divided by negative 2 would be positive 5. N to the 7th divided by n to the 4th. Well, remember, that's the law of exponents. So top exponent minus bottom, which will be 3. Positive 14 divided by negative 2 will be negative 7. And then n to the 6th divided by n to the 4th. So remember, law of exponent, top minus bottom, 6 minus 4, that would be 2. Then over here, positive 8 divided by negative 2 will be negative 4. N to the 4th divided by n to the 4th. So it will be top minus bottom, 4 minus 4. When it's n to the 0, when your exponent is 0, so here, I'm not going to leave it like that. Again, when it's negative 4 n to the 0 power, I'm going to rewrite it as negative 2 n to the 4th times 5n to the third minus 7n squared minus 4. So I changed that into 1, which I let it go, and then simply just minus 4. That will be our final answer. In this example, we have negative 12 x to the 9th power times y to the 2nd power, and then minus 15 x to the 5th power times y to the 8th power, plus 18 x to the 3rd power times y to the 14th power. So in this example, we have two variables, so we gotta be very careful with their exponents. So again, we have 3 terms, but the process can be applied if you have more than 3 terms. So let's take a look at the numbers first. Negative 12, negative 15, and positive 18. Since my first term is negative 12, I'm going to divide by each of them by negative. What's in common between 12, 15, and 18 is that all 3 are divisible by 3. So I'm going to put 3 in each. Alright, now, since we have multiple variables, let's take a look at the x. So for sure we're going to be dividing by x. The lowest exponent for x is going to be the 3. So I'm going to write x to the third, x to the third, x to the third. Now let's do the y's. The lowest of the y's for the exponents is the square. When comparing with 2, 5, and 14, I'm going to use the 2 for the y. So y squared here, y squared here, y squared here. So to review, I'm dividing the numbers by 3 because it goes in 12, 15, and 18, and I'm also dividing by as a negative 3 because the first term is negative. And each of the 3 terms, they all have x's, so I'm going to divide by x to the third because the third is the lowest exponent for between 9, 5, and 3. In addition, I'm also going to be dividing by y squared, the 2, because that's the lowest exponent compared between 2, 8, and 14. So this is my GCF, my greatest common factor. It will be outside the parenthesis. So negative 3 x to the third power y squared in front of the parenthesis. Alright, now let's divide each of the terms. Negative 12 divided by negative 3 will be positive 4. X to the 9th divided by x to the third, well, again, top exponent minus bottom, so it's 9 minus 3, 6. And the y's, top minus bottom, 2 minus 2, that would be 0. Alright, negative 15 divided by negative 3 will be positive 5. So I'm dividing with the x's, so it'll definitely be x. 5 minus 3 will be 2 for the exponent. And then same thing with the y's. Top exponent minus bottom, 8 minus 2, that will be 6. Alright, my last term, positive 18 divided by negative 3 will be negative 6. Alright, so my x's, 3 minus 3, it will be 0 for the x. Now the y's, top minus bottom, 14 minus 2 will be 12. Alright, I'm not finished because I have a y to the 0 power and an x to the 0 power. So I'm going to simplify my answer. My GCF, negative 3 x to the third y squared, 4 x to the 6. If it's y to the 0, that becomes 1. I don't need to write it. Nothing changed here, so it's going to be 5x squared y to the 6 minus 6. Since it's x to the 0, that becomes 1. I'm not going to write it. And then it's just y to the 12th power. And that will be our final answer. And box it up. So again, anything to the 0 power, that is just changed into 1. And I don't need to write the 1 next to it because nothing's going to change. So x to the 0 power, that became 1. It won't change, and it just becomes 6 y to the 12th. That's all you have to do.